you are the amalgamation of whatever you breathe, touch, and eat today. And if you keep isolating yourself further and further from nature, you become a very monotonous expression of nature. And so if you live in an air-conditioned home and you keep your windows closed, you run to the garage, you jump in a plastic off-gassing car, you drive with windows closed and air conditioning to the office, you park and you breathe gasoline fumes while you walk into the office, and then you walk into the office that's an off-gassing amalgamation of carpet and paint and drywall, and you breathe that all day long while you look at a computer screen that's feeding you a blue tone, light source that has nothing to do with the solar cycles of life, the light forms that change from morning to night, and you're isolated in every form. The bacteria in your skin and in your gut become very monotonous. You lose biodiversity for this disconnect from nature. And so you become much like that chemical farm that's lost its vitality and is overrun by multi-drug resistant weeds. And you're going to have sinus problems, you're going to have sleep problems, you're going to have attention problems, you're going to have mood disorders, you're going to have all of that for this lack of biodiversity within the ecosystem of the soil within your body. What we find is very exciting is when we reconnect you to nature, when we have you go start walking in old woods, and we start having you touch flora and fauna again, life starts to return to your body very quickly, within minutes. And so if you will go out and breathe fresh air, take off your shoes and let your skin touch earth for more than a few minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, that's enough to really start to get the bacteria of the soils back into your feet, back onto your skin. And the American Gut Project that started 15, 20 years ago is now doing deep microbiome genetic research over in Africa with some of the hunter-gatherer tribes over there. And they're showing 4x to 40x biodiversity within the guts of these indigenous peoples versus the typical Western gut. We've lost 4x. We've lost 80% of our biodiversity, and therefore we express disease as we do. And the cool thing that they're finding in the American Gut Project over there in Africa is they're realizing that the indigenous peoples, one of the dominant species in these hunter-gatherer tribes in the gut, has never been seen in a Westerner's gut. And so they set out to try to find, where's this species bacteria coming from? The only place they could find it is in the hides of zebras. Wow. So these hunter-gatherers will kill a zebra, quarter it, and carry it for 2 days back to the tribe on their shoulders, with bare skin. And in that 2 days, that bacteria becomes their skin becomes the hide of a zebra. And in that, they come back, and immediately you watch these tribes, all of the kids are climbing all over the people that have just returned. They're welcomed back into the family. There's hugs. There's physical contact. There's no clothes involved. So there's no barrier between the zebra skin and the tribe. And then they eat zebra meat. They don't consume that animal until they have become that animal. That's pretty extraordinary. No wonder the zebra feeds them so well. No wonder they find such vitality in their food. If you are a consumer of food instead of a participant and a sense of sovereign witness to your food, if you go to the grocery store and you pick up plastic wrapped pieces of meat, and you've actually never seen a cow up close, you've never touched a cow, you've never touched a chicken, you've never held a chicken, and you're sitting there eating its eggs that were washed of all of their bacteria so they would look pretty in the carton next to you so there'd be no fecal matter or anything else on there, you don't have the bacteria appropriate to welcome this thing into your body. And so it's a very terrifying thing that we have a food system that has so separated ourselves from the source. And in our isolation from our food, we have 5,000-mile supply chains now of food based on slave labor. The food system is the most horrific humanitarian crisis we have. The abuses of farmers globally is the living day concentration We have built multi-trillion-dollar food system on slave labor globally. If you're going and buying a cucumber for 1.5 pounds, you're literally supporting slave labor somewhere in the world. And so we have to come to terms with the fact that when we disconnect ourselves from soil, When we lost our fundamental relationship to Earth, we stopped growing our own food. We stopped carrying our own zebras. We also lost the sovereignty of the sense of the people that we would ask to go do the labor. We didn't just become disconnected from the soil. We became disconnected from our humanity. And so we compartmentalize our lives, and we think it's somehow somebody must care about. I actually don't even think people realize somebody's picking the cucumber.
Yeah.
I don't think somebody realizes that somebody's growing the cucumber. I don't think people actually know what a cucumber is. They just say, wow, this salad is great. And they forget that the salad actually has cucumbers in it. Like, we are so isolated from reality. And in so doing, we have disrespected life on every scale. And so we have a humanitarian crisis. We have a soil crisis as we started to believe in extraction versus co-creation. And so we are the tumor on the planet. We are extracting energy from every system, human systems, planetary systems. We're extracting more and more desperately every year in our fear of scarcity, our fear of death. This whole anti-aging movement that we're in right now of our industry, integrative medicine, everybody, well, it's all about longevity medicine. It's all about, youth forever. What happened to our respect for elders? Why are we trying to resist becoming elders? What are we afraid of? Are we afraid of gaining wisdom to find out that we had done everything wrong? I think that's why we are resisting wrinkles on our face, not because we don't want to become old, because we don't want to become wise. Because the moment we become wise, we find out we've been on an empty journey. We have been chasing all the wrong things. We've put 99% of our energy into other people's metrics of success. The wisdom that we're resisting on the face that we see in the mirror is not a fear of wrinkles. It's a fear that we may be denying our reality. We may be denying self. And so we want to believe we're young. We want to believe there's lots of years ahead to figure out life because there's a mounting scream within us saying, you're going the freaking wrong way. Correct the course. Correct the course, humanity. You don't have much more time to become wise. And so step into solitude, and ultimately you'll find your way back to soil. Soiltude. We will find ourselves back to soiltude when we realize we are a central processing unit for life to occur. We are not some sort of competitive, species fighting for life. We were given life. And if we can't receive that gift, then we will fight against death. We will receive the gift of life. We will fight against death. That's our choice. We can go one way or the other. To receive, you have to be silent. You have to be hands open. To fear death is to have a chokehold on life. And so we have to open our hands up, start to receive. We have to receive in our backyards. We need to plow up our backyards and plant gardens again. We need to plant the garden to remind ourselves not just of the soil, but of the humans that we've been forcing to grow our food for us at slave labor rates. And currently we're losing 8,000 farms a year in the United States to bankruptcy or a lack of succession. The kids can't work on the farms anymore because there's no economic benefit to it. So they all left the farm. And so these farms are going bankrupt, or our average age of farmers in the United States is approaching 70 years of age. Average age of farmers, 70 years old in the United States. There's nobody to take over. The farmers are dying of suicide. They're dying of their fourth cancer because they have been put on the front lines of chemical warfare against nature.
Yeah.
And so we are only moments away from losing our food system. And the pandemic showed it. Suddenly our shelves were empty. Suddenly everybody working in a meat processing plant got deathly ill because they're covered in antibiotics every day. Because to keep meat from growing invasive weed-like species of bacteria, you have to cover it in bleach and awful, antibiotic sprays all day. And so any worker in the food system became the most vulnerable to a pandemic. And so we lost reams of our workers, not to death necessarily, but they got sick and then they got paid not to work in most Western cultures. And so suddenly we lost our workforce because they were so vulnerable. And they were plunged into deeper poverty and dependence on their governments and, welfare programs and everything else. We disrupted the supply front line of food because it was so vulnerable to begin with, because we had so disrespected the soil and the worker and the creative farmer that would have the courage to go out and create. So if it's just a single pot you start with in your backyard, start there. Plant something in the soil. So that's the journey at kind of the macro level. If you'll allow me, I'll do a micro version of that real quick that I think is beautiful.
Let's see.
But soil, it turns out, was my avenue into my current journey of intrinsic health. So we had started this nutrition center, and we were feeding everybody well scientifically proven diets that would reverse inflammation and chronic disease. Plant-based diets that were rich in alkaloids and medicine within the food and anti-inflammatories and anti-cancer compounds, antidepressant compounds in the food. And there was 40 years of science. By the time I launched this in 2010, there was 40 years of good science coming out of Cornell and a lot of great universities showing that, my gosh, the food system has all of this intelligent medicine within it. And so I took all of that science and I developed a nutrition program, plant-based nutrition program. And I, like I said, saw 30% of my patients like reversing chronic disease like butter. It was just like beautiful. It was just smooth transitions. Every week they felt better. Less medicines, wean them off all their drugs. Diabetes goes away. Obesity finally reduces. Their depression goes away. Their migraines go away. Their cancers remit. All of this beautiful stuff happening in that chunk. But when we were seeing 30% of our patients actually get worse, it started to lead to those questions you just had about soil. Is there something missing from the food? Are we missing the food, the medicine within the food? So I set out into soil science for the first time with a couple of colleagues, and we were looking at papers based on soil science as to kind of what was missing, and I believed it was really going to be that. But not only did we find that we had lost 80 to 90% of many of the micronutrients in our food, and therefore our alkaloids and all the medicines within our food, which had happened. Lycopene is a good example. So lycopene in tomatoes is a really cool anti-cancer compound. And the tomato of today has a fraction of the lycopene that tomato had in the 1960s. Huh. And the reason we lost that was because we destroyed soil systems through chemical farming. So we started spraying antibiotics into our soil systems. And as soon as we did that, we weakened the plants. And so then we had to spray more fertilizers and medicines into the food. So we developed a drug dependence in our food system, and it got more and more expensive every year. That's why so many farms are going out of business. Is it costs so much money to put the ICU drugs into the plants to keep them alive long enough to get to harvest.
Wow.
That we're losing the entire economic viability of farming. And the same thing's happening in the ICUs of America. We're now spending 4x military spending on ICU medicine. Yeah. And so we did the same thing in soil as we did in our hospital systems. We came to believe we were against things, and we needed to wake up every morning as a farmer or a physician and kill something. And so we went out to kill bacteria and the pneumonia. We went out to kill the invasive weeds. And so we get up every morning to go kill stuff, to only find out that we're killing ourselves in our belief that we are in competition with nature itself.
If you enjoyed that clip from my podcast, here's another powerful clip that is really going to help you with your health and happiness.
As we sit down every day to make a decision about what we eat, or we go to the store to buy some food, we need to realize whatever we put into our body is either going to take our health down or build our health